One of the biggest reasons why people stay stuck being chronically sick isn't because they're lazy, it's not because they're not trying hard enough, it's not because they're not dedicated enough oftentimes. It's because they keep making the same mistakes unknowingly over and over again and not being able to correct these mistakes because oftentimes they're completely unaware of these mistakes. And in a moment, I'm going to talk about exactly what the 5 biggest mistakes are that they constantly make over and over again, which sabotages their ability to heal and overcome them. But first, let's talk about exactly what keeps people stuck without even getting to the point where they could have been progressing or they could have been healing on their own. And that's things like actually getting the wrong information, like hearing or chasing all these trendy diets, or listening to these guys on these famous doctors on YouTube, or these podcasters that have been saying the wrong misinformation over and over and over again and haven't actually helped people heal at all. These popular guys out there who have these huge brands and these huge big names that are just giving out flat out terrible advice, but they have a big name or they have a big supply of money to invest into their business to blow it up, that they become real popular and they have an audience and they have people that think they're actually helping people, or that they actually make changes in people's lives. And it's like, that's not the case. From the outside, maybe it looks like they're helping people, but on the inside, if people that, and trust me, from somebody who went through all the doctors and all the famous podcasters out there and really just like dove into so many things back in the day when I had my neurological problems, which took me years to get out of, and it wasn't until I found medical medium advice that I was finally able to reverse my symptoms. But I went through all the trendy diets, I went through all the fads, I chased all the doctors and all the names and all the new things coming out and all the latest research, the cutting edge research they talked about and the studies that they listed, and none of it worked. And trust me, I wish it had worked. I wish it was that easy. I wish the science, was cutting edge and super up to date and actually would be able to reveal like these new ways to get past all these sicknesses and illnesses and symptoms that I was having even personally at the time. But as it turns out, 99% of it was just BS. Like there's some grains of truth here and there you'll hear, and absolutely. But most of it overall, like the grand macro scheme of things, is a lot of BS and just doesn't help people heal their symptoms because it never really gets to the true cause. Like Anthony talks about pathogens like EBV, the true cause being a lot of these background dormant viruses that become activated over time and no longer dormant, that end up causing a lot of these problems. Like EBV is one of the big ones. And that's why I'm here to tell you some of the biggest mistakes you're making right now, aside from just not doing, this stuff here, the medical medium protocols, which actually do work, the lemon water in the morning, the celery juice first thing after that, 20 minutes after that, heavy metal detox shortly after that, 20, 30 minutes after that, the fruits and vegetables throughout the day, all those things, and then adding in the right supplementation, the B12, the vitamin C, the zinc, etc., those types of things. But you got to have those things, and then you got to also avoid the big mistakes that will sabotage even when you're doing things the right way, even if you're doing this stuff, or you think you're doing this stuff, like following the protocols, like you're doing some of it, but if you're not doing all of it in the right ways and you're still doing some of these other things, that will sabotage your success. So let's start from the top and go down to one being the severe biggest mistake that you're making, 5 being a big mistake but not the biggest. So number 5 though is the fact that you're still focusing on the symptoms and not actually the root cause of what's causing your chronic sickness. So if you're following medical medium protocols and you're like down to the T, this probably doesn't apply to you as much, but if you're somebody coming from the outside, or maybe you just heard of medical media, maybe you just heard of this stuff, maybe you just started watching my channel, my videos, you might not know as much, but chasing symptoms is the one-way ticket to Belucaville. It's the one-way ticket to being stuck on Mattress Island for infinite eternity. Like you're never going to actually heal if you just chase symptoms. For instance, if you have eczema, people always think like eczema is, you got rashes on your hands like I did a couple of years back, rashes on your hands, rashes on your arms, maybe you have it on your neck, your ears, your face, whatever, your legs. You see the redness, you see the scaliness, you see the inflammation, and you think, okay, I got to put something on that. I got to treat this thing and bring it down. And that's true. Like if you want to treat it, there's nothing wrong with putting temporarily, obviously, putting some cream on it, put whatever, natural cream you want, lotion, a mango butter, coconut oil, any of the above type of thing, or even something more significant, more, powerful that may have, like, the Aveeno creams of the world, the Eucerins of the world, the CeraVes of the world, like those things as well. Temporarily, I got no real issues with them. They're not great for you long term, but to mask symptoms temporarily, those things are fine. The problem is those things don't, and those are like, the safest of the safe. I would highly recommend at all times to avoid things like topical steroids or even oral steroids for the situation. Some of the other things like Dupixent and some of the other real powerful ones that have a laundry list of things to worry about down the road. I don't want to talk too much about that in this video, but just things like that. There's drugs out there, way more heavy duty drugs that can hurt your progress longer term and hurt you more internally, say, than the natural ways of doing things, or the less potent non-natural ways, for instance, in terms of creams and lotions and stuff. But you can do those things, and there's nothing wrong temporarily if you want to go out, in public and you want to be more presentable and those types of things to mask some of the symptoms that you're going through. Perfectly fine. The problem is people think that when they do that, they've actually solved the problem. Thing is, though, that root cause of the eczema or the psoriasis or whatever else you're going through isn't actually a topical thing. It presents itself topically, which obviously makes you think it's topical, but the root cause of it is a liver issue. The root cause of it is dermatoxins coming from the liver, from an EBV, which is feeding from a toxic heavy metals like copper, mercury, aluminum, and also other things like DDT and other toxins from the past, pesticides, etc. But it's mostly a heavy metal issue, and it's 100% rooted in the liver. It's a liver issue, so you got to cleanse the liver. You got to stop chasing the symptoms, which is what most people do in most cases when they're not seeing any progress. And that's for everything across the board. It's not always liver. Liver always plays a part, but it's not always 100% liver, as in like with eczema. But it's always something internal going on that you have to fix. And it's almost never just a symptom that you can treat to fix the root cause. Like treating the symptom itself downstream is not going to treat the upstream cause of what actually is causing that symptom. Mistake number 4 that people are making, unfortunately, is expecting their healing to happen overnight or within a couple of weeks. And oftentimes, if it's something severe, if it's something you're dealing with for many months or even many years or a couple of years, it's going to take a lot longer than a few weeks. And that's just the reality of it. If you go to somebody and they tell you they can heal something up in just a couple weeks or a couple days, 99% of the time they're complete full of shit. Like they're lying to you, or they're trying to sell you something, or they're basically trying to scam you. Your body takes time to heal. Everybody's healing is different, by the way, though. That's something important to know as well. Some people can heal from the same type of thing and a couple of months, whereas somebody else might take a year to heal from that same thing. Because even if they have like the same thing on paper, their bodies are completely different internally. Everybody has a different set of heavy metals, of pesticides, of pathogens, of different quantities, of different varieties, of different potencies, and they're also in completely different environments. Like someone could be living across country in a perfectly clean environment. Their air's clean. They're getting clean, healthy water every day. The food they're eating is much cleaner, and someone else is living on the other side of the country, and it's the complete opposite. They're living in a toxic house environment. Maybe they got mold, they got VOCs, they got people doing wildfires all the time outside near them. Maybe they're living right next to a golf course. So, and their water isn't as clean. So there's multiple things that go. There's infinite amounts of variables here, which go into what will determine the healing process. And then of course how well you actually stick to the protocols and push them and get enough sleep. That's another thing as well. Stress levels. That's another thing as well. So there's so many different variables, and it's like if you do everything right, you can heal up in as quickly as possible. And again, on average, it may be 3 to 6 months for most conditions, maybe a month for something. Like some people can heal up super quick if they're very young or they're healthy overall. Maybe they just started getting symptoms. They can heal up pretty quickly. Sometimes it might take a month or two and they're back to normal. And it's amazing when that happens. But for some other people, they're more on like the 9 to 12 month mark, or maybe even the 18th month mark in some situations. But you got to be patient with the process. Like healing, you can't determine your healing rate. It's different for everybody, and you just got to stick with what you know works and have faith that you're doing the right things, and that when your time comes to heal fully, it'll come in due time and like on its own course. So just be patient with it and stop trying to like try a million different things and jump around to the next diet or next fad, because it's just going to set you back. This thing works. These protocols and this thing work. Just stick with it. Be patient. Optimize your environment and do the protocols in terms of food and supplementation, and you'll get there. Trust me, you will get there. And the more you stop stressing about how quickly you'll get there, the faster you'll actually get there. Mistake number 3 that we sort of already touched on before a little bit, but I wanted to emphasize even further here, is overlooking the liver. As I mentioned before, the liver is basically involved in like 99% of chronic sickness cases. It may not be the main factor, but it's always a major factor. And when people overlook the liver, they're really overlooking the number one thing that's contributing to the toxic load in the body, and also where most of the pathogens get stored in the body, or many of the pathogens get stored in the body, like EBV. And so when that happens, the symptoms get worse and worse over time, because if you're not actively cleansing your liver, if you're not getting rid of the toxins and the toxic burden and the EBV and the pathogenic burden on the liver, it's just slowly going to bog things down over time and make things worse for you in the end. So you can do a lot of things right, but if you're not actually actively going out of your way to cleanse the liver each and every night, and then starting or each and every day and night, and starting your mornings off with lemon water, 16 to 32 ounces first thing in the morning, and then waiting about 20 minutes or so, 20-30 minutes, and then having, depending on how much you need, but 16 to 32 ounces plus of celery juice. And if you're dealing with something major, even more than that for the celery juice. And then after that, of course, doing the Heavy Metal Detox Smoothie by Anthony William. Unbelievable for the liver, unbelievable for heavy metals. It literally pulls heavy metals right out of your brain, of your thyroid, of your liver, everywhere across the body. It's pulling heavy metals safely out and removing them from your system. Pulling them out of the liver is incredibly important too, because everything gets stored there. So you want to slowly ease that burden on the liver over time. And if you're not doing the cleansing and eating as much fruits and vegetables as possible throughout the day, that's like the basis, the foundation for everybody to start their morning. Lemon water, celery juice, Heavy Metal Detox Smoothie, but also fruits and vegetables throughout the day. If you're not actively doing these things, you're not going to be cleansing that liver. Mistake number 2, along these same lines as well, is having too much fat in your diet. And this is obviously a huge liver burden in general. It slows down your detoxification. It slows down your ability to cleanse. It slows down your ability to heal in general, big time. And it mainly does that, again, because of the liver. And basically, the liver is cleansing out the blood. When you're eating fruits and vegetables throughout the day, when you're taking things like B12, zinc, vitamin C, you're able to clear up that blood and make it cleaner. And when it's cleaner, the nutrients get to the places in your body that they're supposed to be. But when it's muddied up by having too much fat, and by the way, most people in America, the overwhelming majority of people in America, have way too much fat in their diets. Even people that think they're eating healthy, people who think in general like, oh, I have a very healthy diet, I take care of it, they're having way too much fat even still. Way too much protein, way too much fat. But so like when you're having too much protein, too much fat, your liver gets bogged down. It's not able to cleanse the blood like it should be, and it's not able to get the nutrients to the places in your body where they need to be. It's also not detoxifying. It's not cleansing. It's keeping those pathogens. It's keeping those toxic heavy metals. It's keeping everything bound up, and it's keeping them in your system as opposed to getting them out of your system when you're doing things like the morning cleanses and the Heavy Metal Detox Smoothie. Those things are all great to pull them out. But if you're still having way too much fat throughout the day, you're just slowing everything up and binding things up in your body, so you can't get rid of these things that are actually causing the symptoms that you so much want to get over and get rid of in general. And that's really going to sabotage your health and your ability to heal almost as much as anything else. But the number one thing that's sabotaging your health, the biggest mistake that you're making, or that you may be making if you're not following the full medical medium protocols to a T, is that you're still eating foods, not just fat, which is bad in of itself, like too much fat, but you're eating the foods in particular that actually actively feed pathogens and viruses in your body all day long. So things like eggs, dairy, gluten, MSG, canola oil, what else? Artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners, corn, soy, all these things. Like there's so many of these key, all of these, and there's a few more major ones, pork as well. There's a few major ones that actively, and the top three ones are the big three. The eggs, the dairy, and the gluten. Those are the big three. Like those are the ones you want to avoid more than anything. And also, like I would add MSG to that as much as possible. But people still think, like even to this day, eggs are a health food or they're a superfood. They're not. They would be were it not for the fact that they feed EBV and other pathogens. Like that's their number one food source. They ruined eggs way back in the day, and they're now no longer a health food or a superfood. They're actually a terrible food for you simply because of that fact. Same thing with dairy. And you know, there's different forms of dairy, but in general, dairy could have been good were it not for the fact that they feed EBV and other pathogens extremely potently, extremely powerfully. So that's the thing. There's so many different things. Like MSG is hidden as natural flavors in different, you know, food sources. People don't realize how much MSG is actually in all the products they consume on a regular basis, because these big food companies have chosen and went out of their way specifically to hide that wording MSG or monosodium glutamate on their packaging, so that they can get away and they can slip it into a lot of foods. And people are unintentionally having these things on the regular, and these things are sabotaging people's health. So that's the thing. You got to really go out of your way to avoid these foods and not accidentally have these things, especially when you go out to different restaurants, you go out to different places, you get different, you know, any type of food packaging. You really got to look at the label and know when there's words like natural flavors or natural flavoring or variations of that, hydrolyzed protein extract, like things like that. There's many different ways to say it, but if you don't know it, look it up and actually know what you're consuming on a regular basis. Don't just take it blindly thinking that, oh, because it says it's natural, if it sounds like it's okay, 9 times out of 10 it's probably not okay. So you really got to be aware of that and try to avoid these foods at all costs, because they're just sabotaging your health. You might be taking 5 steps forward by doing a lot of the things right, but when you eat these foods, you're taking 5 steps or even like 6 or 7 steps backwards, and you're not going to be able to ever move forward and actually get over these symptoms for good. So remove all the problematic foods, stay consistent, lower the fats down, do the basic foundation to start your day: lemon water, celery juice, heavy metal detox every single morning. Start your day off right, and then fruits and vegetables throughout the day. Try not to get lost in all the distractions, all the fad diets, all this, all that. Just trust that this process works, because it does work. It's helped hundreds of thousands, if not more by this point, heal from the worst of the worst conditions out there. The worst of the most irreversible things that they said you could never fix, you could never resolve, you can never fix those symptoms, they'll never go away. It's fixed those things. It's made them go away in hundreds of thousands of different people. And I'm one of those people personally. I fixed a major neurological condition that was sabotaging my life, ruining my life in many ways. And I overcame a major severe eczema outbreak a couple of years back using these exact protocols and sticking to not making these 5 mistakes that we talked about in this video, and really just focusing on what works and knowing what works and being dedicated to seeing that through, and also being patient with the healing process. It's not an overnight thing, but if you stay committed to it, it will happen. I promise you that. If you want to have a free strategy call with me and go over some of your symptoms, some of the things you're dealing with, some of the chronic symptoms that you're maybe stressing about or suffering from for a long period of time, or maybe something new that's popping up, or maybe something like in the future you're worried about maybe getting, do me a favor and click the link below, and we'll set up a call that we can go over these things and figure out a perfect strategy for you to remain clear of all these things, or for you to help you get over some of these symptoms that you're dealing with. Or if you want to just have a community where we have more content like this, videos, more things that we talk about different symptoms and ways to overcome them using medical medium protocols and other healing tools, make sure you click that link below as well. That'll be in the description. But take care.